Okay, so as you can see here, I've got my two side pieces cut. I didn't stick my base piece in yet because I just wanted to show you something with that. So my next step now is I'm just going to take my snips, and because this is a straight edge and it's not very long, it's fairly easy for me to just go in with my scissors and cut along this edge to trim down the paper to the correct size. So there you can see what that looks like. Scraped off a little bit of the paint, but that's okay. I'll probably go in and touch that up. Now, I wanted to show you just a little something here. When I was shaving down my paper, and I used my paper trimmer just to get hairlines, just shaving it in very thin slivers off to fit it inside, I went a little bit too far on one side, and you can see now that I have some of the bottom showing. So to solve this problem now, I could go cut another piece of paper, but I actually don't have a lot of this paper left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of my gesso, and I'm just very carefully going to brush up against there, and then I'll probably put a little bit of green paint there as well. Now in retrospect, I probably should have painted the bottom just in the case of such an eventuality, but I guess I wasn't thinking that far ahead. So I'm going to add a little bit of gesso, and then I'm going to go back in with a little bit of my green paint. So as you can see here, I've fixed those gouges I made in the paint, and I've also added some green along the inside edge of my base. So I'm now going to take my medium, and I'm going to apply it all along the bottom, and then stick my piece of paper in, and then just use the edge of my bone folder to really press that down into the corners and into the edges, just to make sure that it's nice and flat and smooth. And if you have anything flat, like you can also take, you see here, this is my craft scraper, and using that just to make sure it's nice and smooth, and push down. And there you can see we now have the entire inside of the box covered. So I'm now going to take a bigger paintbrush, my big flat brush here, just have to blot the water off of that, and then I'm going to give the entire inside of this several coats of my matte multi-medium, drying in between. So I've finished with a couple layers of that matte medium on the inside, and I'm now ready to work on the sides. So I've cut two pieces of my paper here that are 2 3/4 by 4 7/8. And the same process that I used for tracing the small inside, I'm going to lay the paper so that it's over the side, then flip it over, and using my pencil, I'm just going to trace along the lines and then cut out along that line that I traced. So there you can see I've cut that out, and I'm just going to check to see how it fits on the other side, because if it also fits nicely on the other side, I'm going to just use this as a template to cut this out. Now the reason I check on both sides is because, again, with manufactured items, you don't always necessarily know if it was done perfectly without any kind of a mistake. So you don't know if the dimensions are accurate on both sides or identical. So I'm now going to go ahead and cut this out using this piece as a template. So with my two pieces now cut, I'm ready to go ahead and stick them to the side of my coaster holder. And again, I'm using my matte medium, my little brush, and doing it the exact same way I did on the inside. I'm just making sure I have an even coat of my matte medium. I'm going to lay my paper on top of that, and then I'm going to use my craft scraper to smooth away, or to smooth out any air bubbles. Finally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my hobby blade or my craft knife to trim away any overhanging edges, because you'll see when I flip it this way that there are some overhanging edges. It wasn't a perfect cut, and that's because with the lead of the pencil I couldn't get in quite close enough. Now what you may notice, of course, when you run this craft scraper along the side is you may have some of the medium, if you put a lot, squeezing out. As you saw, I just took my finger and then I cleaned that up. So I'm going to attach both sides and then I'll trim them with my blade. So now that I have the paper on both sides, as I mentioned, I have to trim the overhanging paper. Now for the straight outer edges, I'm simply going to lay this onto my cutting mat, take my blade, and then very carefully use the edge to cut the edge of the wood piece as my guide to trim off that excess paper. So you can see like that, I get a nice clean cut. So I'm going to do that here, and on this side as well. Now as I'm finishing trimming off the curved edge, I just wanted to show you here that it was possible for me to take the very tip of my blade and then just very carefully and slowly, using the edge as a guide, trim off the inside, or trim off that excess overhanging edge, like so. So there you can see I've now got all my edges trimmed. So I'm going to go ahead and just set aside my craft mat here, and all that's left to do are the last two sides. So I've got my two pieces of pattern paper. I'm going to stick them down the same way you've seen me do on all the other sides, and then I'm going to lay this on my craft mat again and use my blade to trim the overhanging edges. So now that I have all four sides on the outside covered, my last step in terms of covering with paper is to cover these edges. And for that, I've got some strips of the pattern paper that are 3/8 of an inch wide that I've cut. And I didn't much worry about the length. I just wanted to make sure out of one strip I could get one side and one small piece. So for this, I'm taking again my medium. I'm covering the area on my coaster holder where I want to put my paper, and then I'm placing my paper on top, and with my craft mat and hobby blade, and then very carefully cutting. And there you can see I have that one side covered, and then for this little inside, when I cover it, I'm just positioning it, and then I'm making a little crease mark with my fingernail as to where I'm going to need to cut this, and then I'm just using my scissors and cutting along that crease mark. So I've got my side piece cut perfectly to size, you can see that there, and then I can use my medium once again to go ahead and stick it down. So I'm going to do that for the remaining two edges, and then I'm going to cover both of them with a layer of the medium, and as well as the outside with a layer of the medium as well. So now that I have all the sides covered with my paper and I've added my medium on top, you can see here that where the edges of the paper are, it looks quite white and stark. So I'm taking a Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Big Brush Pen. These are filled with India ink, awesome for using for all sorts of different surfaces. And this is the May Green color, number 170, and I'm just taking it and I'm running it over the edges, and then just using my finger to sort of brush and blend that color out a little bit. So not only will it cover the white edges, but it's also going to give my piece a little bit of extra, the look of a little bit of extra dimension to it. So I'm just taking the edge of my pen, running it across the paper, just to take away some of that stark white color, and then just kind of smoothing it out with my finger. So I'm just going to do that for all the edges of my piece. So I finished coloring all the white edges that were showing using my Faber-Castell Pitt pen. So here you can see what it now looks like. So the last step is to take care of the bottom. And for the bottom, instead of putting paper on there, I decided to use some felt. And this is just wool felt I bought from Paper Tray. I measured the bottom. It was 2.5 by 4 3/16. And you can see how the felt came. It was on a roll. And I used my cutting mat, a rotary cutter, and a ruler in order to measure it. And I'm not even bothering taking that off. I'm just going to use my Fabri-Tac. You could also use a hot glue gun to do this, but because I want to make sure the whole surface is covered, the hot glue gun dries a little bit too quickly. And the Fabri-Tac, I find, is an amazing glue when you're trying to stick different surfaces together. So in this case, sticking fabric to the paint and the wood. It is a little bit stringy though. That's the only thing that I find about this glue that I don't like, is it's very stringy, more so than hot glue or the another glue that I use by Helmar. So I'm just going to cover the entire base. And then I'm going to take my felt and stick it down. And you'll notice that I didn't bring the glue too close to the edge, because as I smooth out the felt, the glue is going to squish out towards the edges a little bit, and I didn't want it coming out from the edges. So then I press it down, and there you can see I now have my felt base on there, and it'll be protected. It'll protect the furniture surface that I put it on. And our coaster holder is now finished. As I mentioned earlier, there are 2 videos for this project, so in order to see how to decorate the coasters, you'll have to watch the other video. Both have been uploaded to YouTube as well as placed in our blog, so if you're watching this video on YouTube, then be sure to click on the link in the video description section and it'll take you to the post you see here. You'll be able to link to the video for the coasters from there. At the end of the week, one lucky winner will receive this amazing collection of tropical Travelogue products generously provided by Graphic 45. All you have to do to enter is to leave us a comment on that same post where you access the videos for today's project. Be sure to visit our blog every day this week for more great projects using Graphic 45's Tropical Travelogue collection, and for more opportunities to win, as each day you leave a comment counts as one entry. See you on the blog!